Hey there, brave soul. Before the story begins, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps keep the spooky stories coming. And who knows, it might just keep the skeletons happy. Listen closely, mortal souls, for this tale unfolds in the witching hours when the veil between worlds grows thin as spider silk. It's about love that refuses to die, secrets that claw their way back from the grave, and a text message that arrived exactly 1 year too late. Her name was Emma Sinclair, 23 years old, living alone in a cramped studio apartment in downtown Seattle. She'd been trying to move on with her life, trying to forget the pain of losing someone she'd once loved more than breath itself. But the dead, as you'll learn, don't always stay buried. It was October 15th, 2023, exactly 1 year since the accident that took Marcus away from her. Emma had spent the anniversary in a haze of wine and old photographs, finally falling asleep on her couch around midnight with her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline to better times. At 3:07 a.m., her phone buzzed. The notification light pierced through her dreams like a knife, dragging her back to consciousness. Emma's eyes fluttered open, her head pounding from too much wine and too little sleep. She glanced at her phone's locked screen, expecting to see some late-night spam or maybe a drunk text from one of her friends. But what she saw made her blood turn to ice water in her veins.
Message from
Baby, I've been trying to reach you for so long. Emma shot upright on the couch, her heart hammering against her ribs. The phone nearly slipped from her trembling fingers as she stared at the impossible message. Marcus had been dead for exactly 1 year. She'd watched them lower his coffin into the ground. She'd felt the cold October rain on her face as they threw dirt over the man she'd planned to marry.
Emma's first thought was that someone was playing a cruel joke on her. Maybe one of Marcus's friends had kept his old phone. Maybe they thought this was their twisted idea of comfort on the anniversary of his death. With shaking fingers, she unlocked her phone and stared at the message thread. But this was definitely Marcus's number, the same one she'd called 1,000 times. The same one she still hadn't been able to delete from her contacts, despite her friends telling her she needed to let go. Another message appeared as she watched, the typing indicator showing those 3 dots that meant someone was composing a response in real time.
I know this must be confusing, but I need you to listen to me. Really listen.
Emma's hands were shaking so violently she could barely type her response.
This isn't real. Marcus is dead. Whoever this isn't funny.
The reply came immediately.
Remember our first date? You wore that blue dress with the little flowers. The one you said made you feel like you were floating. You ordered the salmon, even though you hate fish, because you thought it would impress me. And when you laughed at my terrible joke about the waiter, I knew I was gonna fall in love with you.
Emma dropped the phone as if it had caught fire. No one else knew those details.
She'd never told anyone about the dress or the salmon or that stupid, wonderful moment when she'd first felt the flutter of real love in her chest.
Marcus had taken those memories with him to the grave.
The phone buzzed again. Then again, and again. I know you think I left you, but I never did. I've been here the whole time.
Watching you cry yourself to sleep. Seeing you skip meals because nothing tastes right without me there to share it.
Do you remember what I whispered to you the night before the accident? The secret I made you promise never to tell anyone.
Emma's breath caught in her throat. She did remember.
It had been their most intimate moment, lying together in the darkness of her bedroom while rain drummed against the windows. Marcus had told her something he'd never shared with another soul, a fear that had haunted him since childhood, a vulnerability that made her love him even more fiercely. But how could someone else know that? Even if they'd somehow gotten access to his phone. Those words had never been typed, never been recorded. They existed only in the sacred space between two hearts that had found each other in a chaotic world.
Emma picked up the phone with trembling hands, her rational mind warring with something deeper, more primal. The apartment around her felt different now, charged with an electricity that made her skin crawl. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, more alive, and the air itself felt thick with a presence she couldn't name. She typed with shaking fingers, "If you're really Marcus, prove it. Tell me the secret." The response came so quickly, it was as if he'd been waiting for her to ask. "I told you I was afraid of being forgotten, not just dying, but disappearing completely from the world like I never existed. I made you promise that if anything ever happened to me, you'd remember the real me, not just the good parts, but the messy, complicated, human parts, too." Emma's vision blurred with tears. Those were his exact words, spoken in the darkness of 3 a.m. confessions when defenses were down and hearts were raw. She could still feel the weight of his head on her shoulder, still smell his cologne mixed with the rain from outside.
I know you've been trying to forget me. I know you threw away my sweater last month and deleted most of our photos. You think moving on means erasing me. But that's not what I wanted.
She had thrown away the sweater on a particularly bad night when his scent still clung to the fabric and made her sob until she couldn't breathe. And she had deleted the photos, all except one that she kept hidden in a folder labeled work documents because she couldn't bear to see his face every time she opened her gallery. I need to tell you something I never got the chance to say. Something I was gonna tell you the night I died. Emma's heart stopped. The night Marcus died. They'd had plans. He was supposed to come over after work and said he had something important to discuss. She'd spent hours getting ready, had even bought ingredients to make his favorite dinner, but the call came instead. Police, hospital, words that turned her world inside out and upside down. What? She typed, though her fingers could barely find the right keys.
I was gonna ask you to marry me. I had the ring in my car when it happened. They never found it in the wreckage, but I know you would have said yes. I could see it in your eyes every time you looked at me.
Emma began to sob, deep, wrenching sounds that seemed to tear themselves from her chest because he was right. She would have said yes without hesitation. They talked about the future in careful, hopeful whispers, had planned a life together that death had stolen in a single moment of twisted metal and broken dreams.
But that's not the secret. The secret is darker than that.
The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Emma pulled her blanket tighter around herself, but the cold was coming from inside, creeping through her bones like ice water through her veins.
The secret is that I didn't die in an accident.
Emma stared at the message until the words blurred together, her mind refusing to process what she was reading. The official report had been clear. Marcus had lost control of his car on a rain-slicked highway. It hit the guardrail and flipped 3 times before the vehicle caught fire. They'd said he died instantly, that he hadn't suffered. She'd clung to that small mercy in the darkest hours of her grief. "That's impossible," she typed. "I saw the police report. I identified your body. You saw what they wanted you to see. You identified what was left after they were done with me. But the crash was just a cover-up.
and I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know. The apartment felt like it was closing in on her. The walls pressing closer with each message. Emma could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could feel sweat beating on her forehead despite the supernatural chill in the air. Do you remember how paranoid I'd gotten in the weeks before I died? How I kept looking over my shoulder? How I started keeping odd hours? She did remember Marcus had become increasingly anxious in his final weeks, claiming that someone was following him, that his phone was being tapped, that his computer at work was being monitored. Emma had assumed it was stress from his job at the tech company. He'd been working on some classified government contract that he couldn't discuss. She thought he was having a breakdown. Now the memory felt like ice in her veins. I found files on the company servers that I wasn't supposed to see. Personal information on citizens, surveillance data, plans for something called Project Looking Glass. When I tried to report it, I realized the corruption went all the way to the top. They killed me for what I knew, and staged the accident to silence me. But death isn't the end they thought it would be. Emma's rational mind was screaming that this was impossible, that dead people don't send text messages, that grief was making her hallucinate or someone was playing an elaborate, cruel joke. But her heart recognized something in those words, the cadence of Marcus's thoughts, the way he'd always uncovered conspiracies where others saw coincidences. They think they can bury the truth with my body, but love is stronger than death, and the truth demands to be heard. As Emma read those words, she became aware of a sound that made her blood freeze, the soft creak of her apartment door opening. She lived on the 4th floor, kept her door locked, had installed a security chain after Marcus died because she'd felt so vulnerable living alone. But someone was in her apartment. I've been trying to reach you for a year, but the veil is thinnest on anniversaries. Tonight, I can finally come home. Emma's hands were shaking so violently, she could barely hold the phone. From the direction of her front door, she could hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, familiar, the way Marcus used to walk when he'd come home from work. Tired but happy to see her. "Where are you?" she typed, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. The response made her soul leave her body, turn around.
Emma's entire body went rigid with terror. Every instinct screamed at her not to turn around, not to see what was behind her. But love, twisted, desperate, undying love compelled her to slowly rotate on the couch. Standing in the doorway between her living room and kitchen was a figure she knew as well as her own reflection. Marcus looked exactly as he had the last time she'd seen him alive. Dark hair, slightly mussed, that crooked smile she'd fallen in love with, wearing the blue button-down shirt he'd had on the morning of the accident. But something was wrong. His edges seemed to blur and shift like he was made of smoke and starlight, and his eyes, those warm brown eyes she'd lost herself in 1,000 times, were completely black, like looking into the void between stars. "Hello, Em," he said, and his voice was exactly right and completely wrong at the same time. It had his cadence, his inflection, but there was an echo to it, as if it was coming from very far away or very deep underground. Emma couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even scream. The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered to the floor. Marcus took a step into the room, and with each movement, the temperature dropped another degree. "You asked if I wanted you to come to me," he said, gesturing to the phone. But I realized, why should you have to make that journey when I can make it instead? As he spoke, Emma noticed details that made her soul recoil in horror. His shirt wasn't just blue, It was stained with dark patches that looked suspiciously like blood. His smile, which had once made her feel like the luckiest woman alive, now revealed teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. And when he moved, she could see through him to the kitchen behind, as if he wasn't entirely there. The messages were real. M. Marcus continued, taking another step closer. Everything I told you was true. They did kill me. They did cover it up. But death opened my eyes to so much more. Emma found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "You're not Marcus." His smile widened impossibly. "Oh, but I am. I'm Marcus, plus everything death taught me. I'm Marcus, with all the secrets of the grave whispered in my ear. I'm Marcus, with the hunger of eternity burning in my chest." He was close enough now that she could smell him. Not his cologne, not his familiar scent, but something else, something that reminded her of old graves and wet earth and things that had been buried too long in the dark. "I've been so lonely, Em," he said, reaching out with fingers that were too long and too cold. "A year of watching you, wanting to touch you, needing to hold you again. Do you know what it's like to love someone from beyond the veil, to feel that connection pulling at you like a chain?" Emma scrambled backward on the couch, her back pressed against the armrest. "Stay away from me," she gasped. "You're not real. You can't be real." Marcus, or the thing wearing his face, laughed, and the sound was like wind through cemetery gates. "Real? Em, I'm more real than I ever was when I was alive. Death stripped away all the pretenses, all the lies we tell ourselves. Now I can show you the truth of what love really is." He leaned closer, and Emma could see her own reflection in his black, endless eyes. "Love doesn't die, Emma! It transforms. It becomes something hungrier, something more desperate, something that will cross any boundary, break any law of nature, just to be close to its beloved again." "The files you found," Emma whispered, grasping for anything rational to hold on to. "Project Looking Glass, what was it really?" His expression shifted, becoming almost tender. "You still don't understand. There was no conspiracy, no government cover-up. I made all of that up in the messages because I knew you'd need a reason, a story that made sense to your living mind. The truth is much simpler and much more terrible." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What truth?" "I killed myself, Em." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Emma felt the world tilt, felt reality crack and splinter around her. "The night I was supposed to propose," Marcus continued, his voice gentle but relentless, "I got cold feet. Not about marrying you. Never about that. But about life itself. About my job, about our future, about all the ways I knew I'd eventually disappoint you. So I drove my car into that guardrail on purpose." Emma was sobbing now, great heaving gasps that tore at her throat. No, that's not. You wouldn't."
But as I was dying, Marcus said, kneeling beside the couch now, his cold presence making frost appear on her coffee table, "All I could think about was you. How much I loved you. How I couldn't bear to leave you alone. Love became my anchor, Em. It kept me tethered to this world, kept me from crossing over completely." He reached out and almost touched her face, his fingers stopping just short of her skin. Even that near contact felt like ice water in her veins.
For a year, I've been learning how to reach across the veil. Tonight, on the anniversary, the boundary is thin enough I can finally come home to you.
Emma looked into those black holes where his eyes should be and saw the truth, not love, but obsession. Not devotion, but possession. Whatever this thing was, it wore Marcus's face and carried his memories. But it was twisted by death into something hungry and wrong. You want to know what I whispered to you that last night? The Marcus thing said, leaning so close she could feel the cold radiating from his not quite flesh. I said I was afraid of being forgotten. But that was a lie too. What I really said was that I was afraid of letting you go. Even in death. Especially in death. Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Please just let me go. Let me grieve you and move on. But Em, he whispered, and now his voice was right against her ear, cold as winter breath. I already asked if you wanted to come to me, and you never said no. Emma's eyes snapped open. He was right. In all her responses, in all her fear and confusion, she had never actually refused him. She had questioned, had doubted, had been terrified, but she had never said the words that might have saved her. So here I am instead. Marcus said, his smile now stretching impossibly wide across his face. Ready to take you with me to a place where we can be together forever, where you'll never have to miss me again. Because missing requires separation, and we'll never be separated again. The room was growing darker, the shadows reaching toward her with fingers of their own. Emma could feel her life, her warmth, her very essence being drawn toward the thing that had once been the man she loved. The confession at 3:07. Marcus whispered as darkness closed in around them. Wasn't about what I discovered or how I died. It was about how much I need you, Em. How I'll never, ever let you go. The next morning, Emma's landlord found her apartment empty. Her phone was on the coffee table, still open to a text conversation with a number that had been disconnected over a year ago. The last message in the thread, sent at 3:07 a.m. read, I'm ready to come home now. The police found no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Emma Sinclair had simply vanished. But sometimes late at night, other residents of the building report hearing two voices from her empty apartment. A man and a woman whispering love confessions that sound like prayers, like promises, like chains that bind souls together across the vast darkness between life and death. And if you ever receive a text message from someone who shouldn't be able to send one, remember this. Love that refuses to die is not love at all. It's something far more dangerous, far more desperate, far more hungry than the human